Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. Today I have a TBR jar update for you. I've been taking on that challenge while trying not to buy any more books. I also have my I have finished my first 3 prompts. I picked one with you all and then I picked my other 2, so I'll walk you through what I'm gonna do there. I also wanted to give you a rundown of my September reads. If you saw my first TBR jar video, you'll remember my August totals were really fantastic. I found myself in a little bit of a September slump, but I will go over what I read and how it was. Okay, let's get started with my first 3 picks, and I'm not going to give reviews of these books. I'm just going to give an overview star rating, what I gave it, and then I'm going to talk about why I appreciated the pick and whether or not I would have picked it up if I didn't have the prompt to guide me to it. So starting off, I picked the first prompt, which was the first book you see on TikTok on September 3rd. That ended up being The Naturals, which is a YA thriller series, the start of a series by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I had heard of this author because she's also written the Inheritance Games, which is a newer series of hers. I believe the final book of that one, I believe the final book of that series just came out, and that was the one that was on my TBR. I really appreciated this pick because I'm not a big thriller reader, and so this was a not spooky, not that scary thriller read for me, which is perfect. I also really liked the pacing of this one, and I like that even though a lot of the subject matter is about serial killers, because it was a YA book, it wasn't that intense, it wasn't that extreme. But that doesn't mean there weren't twists. This one had a really good twist at the end, which I think is what led me to rate it 4 stars. Super good. I did read this one on Kindle Unlimited, and unfortunately the rest of the series is not available. So for right now, I do not think I'm going to continue, but there's always hope for the future. And then I ended up finishing The Naturals on September 20th. It was the first book of my challenge that I finished up. If you watched my first TBR jar video where I pulled my picks, you probably remember I was a little nervous about this next prompt, and that was a book that came out the year you were born. But thankfully I ended up with a really good pick with One for the Money by Janet Evanovich, and this is the start of the Stephanie Plum series, which is still an ongoing series. This was a really funny, great little read. I would say it was a romance read because it just like gives romance, maybe a little bit of thriller. I mean, she is a bounty hunter, so there's those aspects going on, but there wasn't a ton of mystery happening. Stephanie Plum herself is the perfect mix of determined, delusional, and endearing. I really related to her character. She is going through it in this novel. She has lost her job and she's looking for her way. Definitely think this is one I would continue with. There are a couple more of the books of this series on Kindle Unlimited. And this is not something I would have normally picked up unless prompted. So I'm really glad that I was prompted, and I ended up giving this one 4 stars as well. I just really enjoyed it. It was one of the books that I ended up finishing up right around the time Hurricane Milton was knocking at my door. So I don't know. I found I have an affinity for those books that I read because I think it was just kind of the perfect escapism at the moment. So I don't know, maybe this one just caught me at a good time and place, but it was also just a really good read. I would absolutely recommend this one, and it did not really feel dated. There were a few like passages and a few like moments I was like, oh yeah, wouldn't write that today. But for a book that was 30 years old, it really had a great modern feel to it. And then that was the second book I finished, and I did not finish this one until October 9th. Finally, when I picked this prompt, I was already knew exactly what I was going to read, and that is a book that was released this year. I ended up going with Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver. This was a 4-star read for me, just like Wild Love was. This was a funny, spicy, endearing story. I really liked our female main character. The one thing that I really appreciated about this book, which isn't always done well, I think Elsie Silver did a really good job writing the children, Wes's children, as characters, not only to serve a purpose in the story, but they helped our female main character. They really helped her come to terms and see things within herself that she had been answers she had been searching for. The children helped her get there, and I appreciated that because sometimes I feel like children are written into a book just so you can make it a single dad trope, and I did not feel like this one did that. I appreciated the use of the kids. This is one I absolutely would have read if not prompted. It was one that was on my TBR, but honestly, I probably wouldn't have gotten to it so quick if it wasn't for this prompt. I didn't pick it up for a while, though. I don't think I started it actually until after I finished One for the Money, which was October 9th, and I ended up finishing this one on October 12th. I will have to check, and I'll pop it up on the screen, what the date was that I pulled my next prompt, but I do remember pulling it with you all, so there's footage somewhere. There should be footage somewhere, and if I didn't, well, I pulled my next prompt. And it was one that I've been sitting on because I didn't know what to pick. And that's a book that's less than 200 pages. This year has been the year that I've really gotten back into reading, and I've gotten back into reading so hard. My totals compared from last year to this year are night and day. Look like two different readers. And in that, I have been reading some absolute monsters of books. So I was like, I don't have anything around that's less than 200 pages. I don't know what I'm going to read. And then I remembered years ago, I was traveling for work and I was in West Virginia, and we stopped by before a couple meetings, and there was a little bookstore there. And I bought a anthology of poetry books. So I thought this was perfect. So this is like a poetry publication. I'm trying to see if I can find the name. It's literally just called Poetry. And that's funny, the P.O. box is here in Florida. So this is the poetry book, which was founded in 1912 by Harriet Monroe. This is volume 216, number 3, and this came from June 2020. This book is about 100 pages long, and it is a poetry book. This will be a really good change of pace for me. It'll also be nice to visit some different works of literature, some modern poetry, and get to a book that has been sitting on my shelf for a while. So that is going to be my 200-page pick. We are excited for it. Okay, and then I have my next 2 prompts, and I'm struggling. I think I know what I'm going to read for one of them. Let me show you my pick. I ended up picking this one right after I finished Wild Eyes, and this is a book that has become a TV show or a movie. When I pulled this, the first thing that I thought was, oh, I am literally watching Netflix's The Lincoln Lawyer. It's in the 3rd season now, and those are based on Michael Conley books. That'll be perfect. Unfortunately, I couldn't find them on Kindle Unlimited. I couldn't, I checked my library shelves to see if I could put a hold on them, and I could, but I would have to wait for a while. And then I checked Libby. Actually, let's check Libby together. I'm really excited about finally hooking myself up with a Libby account. How about I just do all the recordings? So I'll show you what I'm seeing when I try to find the Lincoln Lawyer. So yeah, it's okay. So that's actually like not bad at all. It's about a 2-week wait right now. There's one copy in use, and that's like the first one. What I ended up doing was doing a little more searching. I found a Meg Abbott book called Dare Me, which is a thriller that Netflix made into a movie. So I actually ended up downloading that on the Libby app. And I was all excited because I know Libby books can also work on your Kindle, but unfortunately, this one isn't compatible for your Kindle. So I am going to have to read this one on my iPad, but I will. So that is going to be my pick. I might go back and eventually read The Lincoln Lawyer. I would like that. And I wish I could just open up and show you what this is about, but it looks like I'm going to have to go to Goodreads. Okay, so this one is about high school girls that are cheerleaders. Addie Hanalon has always been Beth Cassidy's best friend and trusted lieutenant. Beth calls the shots and Addie carries them out, a long-established order of things that have brought them to the pinnacle of their high school careers. Now they're seniors who rule the intensely competitive cheer squad, feared and followed by the other girls, until a young new coach arrives. Cool and commanding, an emissary from an adult world just beyond their reach, Coach Colette French draws Addie and the other cheerleaders into her life. Only Beth, unsettled by the new regime, remains outside of Coach's golden circle, waging a subtle but vicious campaign to regain her position as top girl, both on the with the team and with Addie herself. Then a suicide focuses a police investigation on Coach and her squad. After the first wave of shock and grief, Addie tries to uncover the truth behind the death and learns that the boundary between loyalty and love can be dangerous terrain. The raw passions of girlhood are brought to life in this unflinching exploration of friendship, ambition, and power. Okay, yes, this is perfect. I actually was a high school cheerleader, so this will be a fun read. Looking back at squad dynamics, it sounds like this one is going to be tense, thrilling, and entertaining. I also think that a book about high school cheerleaders kind of just feels exactly like fall. That's when fall football season is, and it just kind of feels like the time. So that is Jeremy. I have 14 days on my Libby loan that started today, so I'm going to have to get reading here soon. And then I am going to talk about this prompt, but I am not going to commit myself to a book because I haven't decided what I'm doing yet. And it's kind of not a prompt that I can do that for, but let me walk you through. So I ended up picking read the last book someone recommended to you. The problem is the last book someone recommended to me was Fourth Wing, and I'm already in the middle of that right now. Like literally I started it 2 days before I picked this prompt. So I have the other series and books that have been endlessly recommended to me, not endlessly, but strongly recommended to me, is the ACOTAR series. Well, this is a challenge that I'm taking on, and I'm trying not to buy any books. No buy TBR Jar challenge. I am struggling to find A Court of Thorn and Roses that's not like there's no copies available at my library. The Libby holds are estimating 7 weeks. 7 weeks until I will get this book. So I don't want to commit to that. I don't know what to do. So we're just going to sit on this one. I did mark that I picked it on the 20th. And when I know what I'm reading, I'll let you know what I'm reading. But we'll see. We shall see. So those are my 3 current prompts of my TBR jar that I am going to be reading. And now I'm so far out from making the jar, I don't really remember a lot of the prompts that are in here, which are really cool. I appreciate that I've tried this and I've seen a lot of other fun. I've seen scavenger hunts where you look up clues that like lead you to other books that you own, which are super cool. My personal book collection is, well, scattered. I don't have it all here with me. But it's also just not as big as some of the other ones. So I think this challenge that I'm taking on now, trying to use books that are on Kindle Unlimited, push myself to go to the library, it's just been really great for me because I'm getting to extend and grow my collection without really having to spend any more money. Super cool. I like it a lot. Next up, I'm going to walk you through my September reviews because I had a pretty good September reading month, and before October is over, I want to get this video a churning. If you've been hanging around my channel in the past, you know I struggle with my monthly wrap-ups, but that's okay. September was an interesting reading month for me. I am blissfully unaware of my page count. I haven't updated my story graph yet. Maybe actually I'll do that today. By the time this video is up, you know, magic. Here are all the stats. I ended up reading 7 books. 5 of those 7 books were Zodiac Academy books. So that's really where I was most of the month, and that's kind of how I've been reading. I've been in the middle of one, rather, pretty much every day since July, until actually very recently I finished it up. So I want to talk about my surprise with that series first off, because it was a pretty strong contender for me going in. I did end up feeling good about finishing, but I think I'm actually going to go back. It's been a couple weeks now, and I need to read the last like 150 pages just one more time now that I know what happens, take the emotion out of it, and just look at it from a story perspective, because I think I got in my feelings a little bit. I'm trying to give our authors the benefit of the doubt when I think about the end of the series. But yeah, I'm in my feels. But for my September reads, I mentioned I had my only 5-star read of the Zodiac Academy series, and for me that was book 6, which was Fated Throne. There were just some parts of this book that were so wholesome, so fantastic. I remember telling myself too that this is one that I can read around Christmas time. This is a Christmas book. It's like very much not a Christmas book, but there is a Christmas scene. Okay, yeah. So I said this was just like a perfect mix of everything. And I really did feel that there were those lighthearted moments. There were, I mean, there's sorrow. Of course, there's trauma and sorrow. But I also felt like our 2 female main characters are strong in this book. Oh, this is one I really, really enjoyed. And yeah, that was the only one I ended up giving 5 stars. 5 was close, but 5 also was just a little traumatic. That was a solid 4.5 stars from me. That's Shadow Princess. I did take a break, and then I ended up jumping into a Tessa Bailey book. This was one that I read on Kindle Unlimited, and that's Fix Her Up. It is the first book in the Hot and Hammered series, which the only reason I picked it up was because I picked up the second in the series at the library. And so I figured it's one of those interconnecting characters. Why don't I read the first? And it was, yeah, that was it. It was like cute banter, and they had some our two main characters had chemistry, but I didn't really like them that much. The funny thing about this book, and I don't remember, I think I read it for a football challenge, or during a football challenge rather, was it didn't seem like the end was gonna come. Like, it just came out of literal nowhere. I was like pressing for the next page and it was the acknowledgments. So I was like, well, I guess it's done. I did continue on to the series. This one was a 3-star read for me. The second in the series was a joke. I was absolutely hate reading that one, and that ended up being a 2-star read for me. I was talking about this with my friend Carly. I feel like I keep duping myself with Tessa Bailey books. I want to convince myself that I like them, and every time I finish, I'm like, really? Really? So, I know she has a Christmas book coming out, and Target has been advertising that they have a Target special edition. So I'm, probably going to dupe myself again because I love Christmas books, but maybe one day I'll learn. Do you have a good Tessa Bailey book? That's a good question. Yeah. Do you have one? Like, what is your 5-star? What is your 4-star Tessa Bailey read? Where should I go? Help me out. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Next, I continued on. Like I said, I read 5 Zodiac Academy books this month, so it was another Zodiac Academy read for me, and that's Heartless Sky. That was book 7, and I know for a fact I finished this one up in a Fall in Love with Football Challenge video. I'll link it up here because I was crying so hard during this book. So this one, there's a lot of trauma in book 7. I felt like this also serves as a tonal shift for this series. And what I mean from that is when you've read them, you understand, like, you're not, it's, and this, I get spoiler, you leave the academy, like, you're not at Zodiac Academy anymore. And so I found myself really missing the school aspect of everything. And then I remembered this series used to be called Supernatural Beasts and Bullies. So if that's the case, then, like, you don't have to be at school. Spoiler over. So knowing that the series used to be called Supernatural Beasts and Bullies, I understand where we're at and why this shift has occurred. But I just did want to mention that I felt like this is where the tonal shift of the series happens. I also find myself wanting to, I don't know how I'm going to want to reread these books, if I'm going to want to reread these books, because I enjoyed the world so much, but the ending really just hurt me. I also have not continued on into Darkmoor Penitentiary. I'm saving those 4 books for whenever I need the trauma, I guess. Oh, sorry, I did end up giving Heartless Sky 4 stars. That actually is my last 4-star read of the series, Heartless Sky, number 7. It's a little downhill from there. I have not given 9 a rating yet. Just want to briefly talk about The Naturals. That was the first book I read for my TBR Jar Challenge. I talked about it earlier in this video. It was a 4-star read for me. It featured Cassie, who is a 17-year-old who has this special ability, and the FBI wants to harness it. I really liked this one. It was like I said, a 4-star read, and it had a really good twist at the end. Back to my Zodiac Academy soapbox. Next up, you read 8, and then after 8, you read 8.5, and then after 8.5, you read 8.6. All 3 of these books were 3-star reads for me. Only 8 is full length, which is like over 1,000 pages for these books. They're so incredibly long. But both of the novellas are over 300 pages, so they also have a lot of meat to them. What made me upset was 8 has some pretty dark themes. And I felt like 8 was just a lot of like kicking the can down the line. Eventually something is going to happen. There's going to have to be a breaking point between both sides that are searching for power. I was just so disappointed with 8, and I was more disappointed when I continued on to read 8.5, which is Beyond the Veil. And I was disappointed because I felt like they should have taken 400 pages out of 8, which is Sorrow and Starlight, and taken 8.5, which is Beyond the Veil, and intertwined those stories. Because 8.5 would have been so much more impactful weaved into the story before the conclusion of 8. But because we get the conclusion of 8, by the time you get into 8.5, the stakes are non-existent anymore. It ruined that read for me. It sucked. And then I continued on to Live and Let Lionel, which is the collection of short stories. And it's all the short stories and all these moments I wanted to read, but I just felt like the authors ruined them by having so much of Lionel's perspective in it. I don't care about the bad guy. That made me mad. That just made me upset. And then I don't remember. I'll have to go back and see. I will put the note up. If I started 9 at the end in September, or if I started 9 in October, it took me a little longer than a week to read. I got to a point where I was just open season. I just had to crank through and finish. So those were my September reads for the month. 7 books. I crushed through a good amount of pages, and October has been pretty good. I found myself really liking some books that I've read so far in October, and then on the opposite end, really getting in a little bit of a slumpy slump. Thankfully, I think Fourth Wing is breaking me out of my slump right now. I am 70% in, and yeah, I really enjoy it. I literally downloaded the Libby app today so I could see if I could get Iron Flame, because there is a copy at my library, but I don't think I'm gonna make it to my library before I finish, and I was nervous about somebody taking it. So I ended up putting myself in a Libby hold, and it came through today. So now I need to be a good little reader, read through Fourth Wing so I can get Iron Flame back to the next reader as soon as possible. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me today. I really appreciated going through all of my September reads, my new TBR Jar Prompts. Maybe if I get a little quicker with these prompts, I'll pull more than 3 at one time. Or maybe I'll end up pulling another one while I wait for ACOTAR to come through on Libby. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but of course I will keep you updated, and I appreciate you being here. Have a great day.